Hi, Chris Bittner here, and this is my debate project. Today I'm going to be discussing the pros and cons of hunting wildlife. As with any good debate in the world today, there are pros and cons to each side. Not everything is so black and white, and every choice we make has a benefit and a consequence. Now, living in Wyoming, a debate that I hear people talk about all too often is hunting, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And it is simply both. So with hunting, a lot of questions that I found myself asking was, does it actually help control the population? What about the ones that do it for simply the sport or the trophy hunters? Is there a real benefit to those who hunt? And if there is a benefit, who benefits from it? Doesn't it hurt the animal kingdom and natural selection? Doesn't it hinder evolution? Does hunting benefit the ecosystem? Do hunters really only kill the old, weak, and injured as a natural predator would? So what exactly are the pros and cons to hunting wildlife? And that is exactly what I'll be discussing throughout this presentation. Now, for some of the pros. Wildlife management or conservation, according to Victoria Advocate. Studies have shown that hunting does help manage wildlife, especially if a certain species is overpopulated in certain areas. A prime example of this would be certain white-tailed deer populations. Overpopulated areas of certain species can become heavily damaged, such as overgrazing, diseases spreading quickly, and rapid use of the resources that they require to live. It's only those hunters who respect seasons and limits that ensure that wildlife populations are sustainable. Providing food, material, and sources of income for some. Some people hunt to survive. There are families that hunt for food and hunt for materials to sell or to use. Some hunters harvest the meat and sell it to others. This may be their only source of income to provide for their family. A good example of this would be local fishermen. And it provides employment for game and warden, butchers, taxidermists, and local businesses who sell the meat, maybe people who sell gun supplies, ammunition, hunting supplies like backpacks, things along that nature. The revenue generated from selling hunting licenses. This was actually a big one for me, and I didn't realize it was so huge, really. In most places, the primary source of state conservation efforts come from the selling of hunting licenses. According to the conservation conversation, some areas in Africa conservation programs are so underfunded, and many areas don't have the money to effectively manage wildlife without the revenue generated from those hunting licenses. So in the end, I think it's a good thing to help stop poachers. It also helps local small business owners and large corporations alike sell goods and services that hunters might require. Things like hunting gear, camouflage, scent mask, water purifiers, campers, tents, etc. Larger corporations like Cabela's, who their whole product line is centered around hunting. According to an article in the Powell Tribune, a newspaper out of a small town in Wyoming, big game hunting made over $300 million for our state alone, and estimated that in 2015 there are 119,000 hunters who hunted big game. Family bonding. I think this is a big thing for people in Wyoming. Some of the things people not think about are much is how it can help families bond. A lot of children that I grew up with couldn't wait to go hunting every year with their families. Now that we're older, they can't wait to go hunting with their own children, and their children going hunting with them. For a lot of families, especially here in Sweetwater County, they are avid hunters. Some plan their whole year around hunting season. Like my uncle, for example, he will save almost all of his vacation time simply for hunting season. I think although I do not hunt, the time it gives the families and the lessons it can teach are invaluable. It can teach things like patience, hard work, dedication. And hunting also provides a way to sustain a healthy and active lifestyle. It's not easy work to go hunting. Animal population reducing. Here come the cons. So while hunting can help manage wildlife, it can also hurt the population. Hunting can result in animal population reduction, and some animals have been hunted to endangered levels in parts of the world. Things like elephants, tigers, giraffes, uh, all all things like that. For example, the elephant is endangered because of trophy hunters. Some people want to kill an elephant simply for sport, to say that they did, to have their picture with the corpse of an elephant, and poachers for their valuable ivory tusks. Another animal that is on the endangered species list are Caspian tigers. According to huntercourse.com, Caspian tigers were first put on the endangered species list in the 1960s, but trophy hunting and fur trade has continued despite the heightened risk of extinction. According to Last Chance for Animals, the great auk passenger pigeon and heath hen have been hunted to extinction. The 1973 Endangered Species Act was created largely as a result of the animal extinction caused by hunting. It disrupts the animal's natural circle of life. A lot of animals know to fear certain animals that are its natural predators. Some might argue that humans aren't natural predators, so not all animals know to fear us. If mother or father of an animal are killed while it still has a juvenile offspring, the chances are it wasn't able to teach its offspring everything that it needs to know in order to succeed, and this was according to the conservation conversation. Hunters are less likely to kill an old, sick, diseased animal compared to a natural predator. Generally, hunters would prefer to kill the biggest, nicest of the animals, not the oldest, sick, weak animal. Trophy hunting can lead to making the population very vulnerable to change. Oftentimes, trophy hunters want to kill the strongest member of the population. This interferes with the natural selection and weakens the population as a whole. If they're always killing the strongest, the chances strongest, biggest specimen is killed. That in turn hurts the chances of him passing on his or her genetic material to their offspring. This means the smaller, weaker specimens are more likely to reproduce longer, and after a time, the population as a whole is weaker than it potentially could have been if the strongest, biggest specimens weren't killed. Some are killed inefficiently and could be left to die painful deaths. I like to think that most hunters that I know pride themselves on being humane when they kill. However, there are always those hunters that may not. What happens to the one you shot that got away? Chances are it went somewhere to try and survive and didn't. It could have laid down and died a very slow, miserable, and cold death. It could have made it that much easier to be killed by a natural predator, or it could have sustained the injury until it simply just couldn't anymore. A prime example of this, of an inhumane killing, were these kids I seen today on Facebook, I believe in West Virginia, probably 14 years old or so, and they were kicking a live deer in the head, ripping its antlers off while it's still very obviously alive, and put it through a very slow, painful death, which I believe there's no pride or dignity in something like that. According to Conservation Conversation, restrictions on age of animals allowed to be killed isn't always enforced. This means that younger animals are dying, therefore unable to reproduce, putting the species as a whole at a greater risk. So like with any well thought out argument, there are pros and cons. While I personally am not a hunter, I am in support of certain types of hunting. I will never support trophy hunting or hunting purely for sport. I do support hunting for food. I believe if you kill it, then you should eat it. Hunting does a lot of good for the economy, and in some forms it is good for the population control. If we didn't hunt deer, for example, then the population would grow drastically, and they would deplete all of the resources, and disease would spread rapidly. Hunting can also be dangerous. I too often hear of poachers in Africa killing people for witnessing what they have done, or killing the game management officers so that they can get their hands on the animal. So overall, I would say that as a whole, I support. And here are the sources that I used for my debate throughout the project. Thank you.